And so with that, let's talk a little bit. There's a ton of slides here. I'm not going to get through them all. Obviously, if anybody has opened these slides, and a lot of it is because it's illustrations. If anybody's opened the PowerPoint for T3, there's 99 slides. Okay, so I'm not doing all that today, but we will cover some of the major things. That tutorial 3 teaches us. And let me just bring it up. Did anybody have any questions or issues with anything from T2 before we kind of bulldoze our way into T3? Everybody good with tutorial 2 content? Okay, good. I will take your silence as a positive. And I think that we actually, if I'm not mistaken, and if I didn't put it in Blackboard yet, I do apologize, but didn't we start on one of these last week? It may have even been on Wednesday in the lab, or was I just working on that on my own and hallucinating to you that I was talking to you guys? Let me take a look here. Bear with me one sec. Okay, well, I've got my T3 stuff pulled up here. And so we'll look at some things on some slides here. And I've got a very pitiful looking pug staring at me like he wants to go outside, but he's been out. So if he starts making any little pug sounds, you guys are going to have to pardon that. If anybody's familiar with pugs at all, they are not quiet, not in terms of barking, but noises. And he's just kind of sitting here staring at me. Okay, tutorial 3. Let's get into it. So what we're kind of doing in tutorial 3 is we're getting more CSS, right? We're more focusing on layout of pages. And in this, we learn how to create a reset style sheet. We learn how to explore different page layout designs. We learn how to center a block element. We learn how to create a floating element. We learn how to clear a floating layout. We learn how to prevent container collapse. Use CSS grid styles. Define a grid layout. Maybe I'll just go into slideshow mode. Place items within a grid, work with grid areas, etc. Okay. So at grids, using a grid is kind of useful in terms of if you've got a page layout you want to do where you want things to appear very evenly spaced apart, and you have, a very defined set of, say, columns that you want to have on your page or something. Sometimes, or if you have, even a gallery of photos that you want to display, grids are very useful for that. It's almost like it's almost like, and a lot of people actually insert tables and just kind of hide the table lines and do it that way too, and it gives you the same effect. So we're talking about displaying style. There's 2 classifications of HTML elements. There are block elements and there are inline elements. Okay. Block elements can be things like paragraphs or headings. And inline is emphasized text, inline images, things you're doing right on that line. To define the display style, so which way we want this to display for any page, we use the display property. And that the syntax for that is here for our CSS, right? Much like the properties that we've been working with, where you have the element and then the colon, and then you further define it with the type and then the semicolon. Okay. Yes. Here's some examples of display style values. You know, and this would be like the syntax on the left and what it does on the right, right? You're never going to remember all these, just kind of look at it and, you know that you can refer back to it as need be. But some of the things, the interesting things to note here. So block does, kind of like what you would think it would do. It displays things as a block. So it's kind of separated out or cordoned off, singled out from any other groupings of content or text around it. A table would display as a web table. Inline means it's inline within a block. Inline block is treated as a block placed in line within another block, so like a nested block, if you would. A run-in would display as a block unless its next sibling is also a block, in which case it is displayed inline. And you'll see visually what these things do as we work through the tutorial. Okay. Creating a reset style sheet. So a reset style sheet kind of supersedes a browser's default styles, and it provides a consistent starting point for page design. So the first style rule in a style sheet is the display property used to display HTML5 code, right? Structural elements as blocks. We have a pre-made reset style sheet, and pre-made style sheets are freely available on the web. They contain a lot of style rules that are used to kind of reconcile the various differences between browsers and devices. So different browsers display things differently. Here's an example of a structural element as a block, as blocks, right? So structural styles, this is our comments section. And then here are all of so we're going to block out all of these different properties, right? And so the article, the aside, the figure caption, the figure, the footer, the header, the main, the nav, the section, all of these would be displayed as a block. So anywhere on the web page where these appear, they would display as a block. So that's what it would look like syntactically. I don't think that's a word. Here's a bigger picture. All right, so you can see all of these included, and they're all separated by commas, right? So when you're going to do multiple things, you're going to do a style to multiple elements. We separate each element by a comma. And then in your curly brackets, you have your code that tells it what to do, how to display, right? So in here, for example, and I don't know if I can make this any bigger. Can you guys see this okay? I know when I'm showing my screen in this format, sometimes my screen doesn't appear as big as I'm seeing it myself. So here's all the elements that we are going to apply this set of instructions for code style to, right? So we have background set to transparent. We have font size set to 100%, which sets it 100% is relative to the size of the parent, right? It removes all margin and padding spaces by setting those to 0. And this aligns all the content with the baseline. So vertical align is baseline. All right, this will just kind of show you for the if there's a navigation unordered list or a nav list, having this list style set to none and list style image set to none means it does not display markers for unordered lists within navigation lists. So because by default an unordered list might have like a set of bullets or something. So we're going to tell it with these things not to do that. It'll just be a list of words. Nav A, which would be for your, if you have any of those hyperlinked, you're going to say text decoration none. So that would remove any underlining of hyperlinks within a navigation list and so on. So you can kind of see the different things that a reset style sheet would do, right? So all of what it's saying basically is all of the things that by default would display when you ask for a certain style, when you're styling a certain thing, such as a navigation list or an unordered list. So by default, unordered lists have those bullets. So to create a reset style sheet means you're going to have that specific element. An unordered list will be without bullets in this case, without text decoration, meaning without underlining it and so forth. Okay, so this just kind of resets all of that to remove the default properties of all of these things. That makes sense? Okay. So talking about different page layout designs. So web page layouts fall into 3 different categories. There's a fixed layout, a fluid layout, and an elastic layout. Okay, so in fixed layouts, the size of the page and the page elements are all fixed, usually using pixels as the unit of measure. In a fluid layout, these are really self-explanatory kind of concepts, right? Fluid layout means the width of the page elements are set as a % of the available screen width. An elastic layout is where the images and text are always sized in proportion to each other in other in M units. Okay. And when they talk about responsive design, that is talking about the layout and the design of a page that's going to change in response to the device and the size that's rendering it. So when you go between like a big full screen desktop display to a tablet to a smartphone, the display is going to be different on all 3 of those things. Responsive design will maintain the integrity of your web design or your layout and kind of conform it to those size of a screen. Okay. Here's some visual representations of those page layout designs, fixed versus fluid, right? And they while they would present kind of the same, in a static form, they do different things, right? So here in a fixed, we're going to designate a specific pixel size for each area that we're defining or drawing out, right? In a fluid, we're going to say we want this to be like 20% of this whole available width. We want this to be 40% of this available width and another 40% for this column, right? And this is kind of what it would do in the different, let's say, widths of displays, right? So fixed layouts are going to stay the same regardless of the screen resolution or the width of your display monitor, right? So if we said we want this to be no more than 256 pixels, then that's what you're going to get. And so even if you have this nice big wide screen resolution, 256 pixels is only going to take up that much of your space. Whereas a fluid layout can change because it's a percentage relative to the whole entire thing available, right? Working with width and height, the width and height of an element are usually set using the following properties. So width and height, as you can tell. And you guys are probably picking up on a lot of this as you work within the sandbox, and you have, when you start typing things, you see how it, has autocomplete. You can see a lot of the options available. And that's a big clue too. So, if you are typing something and you don't see an autocomplete for what you think you want to type, then you probably have your syntax wrong, right? So the value is exactly, what width or what height you're going to use. Setting maximum and minimum dimensions, we can set limits on the width or height of a block element by applying the following properties. So we can have a minimum width, a minimum height, a max width, and a max height. And this would be the syntax for those. This is what it would look like. And it just kind of tells you in these. So a lot of these 99 slides are just kind of obvious things, right? Centering a block element, so you can center a block element, of course, with their parent element, either by setting both left and right margins to auto. That's usually the easiest way, and the default way that most people do it is setting them to auto. So your margins are auto. That means it's automatically going to center. Centering an element vertically can be accomplished by displaying the parent element as a table cell and setting the vertical align property to middle. Okay, so you can, so an example here, to vertically center the following H1 heading within the div element, you could do this. So this is going back. Let me go back. So this is the div element. This is on the HTML file, right? And then on the CSS, this is how we would style that to vertically center it. So here's the div element. Here's our height. Our display is a table cell. And then our vertical align is in the middle. So using this style rule, the H1 heading is going to be vertically centered. You can vertically center a single line of text within its parent element this way. You can set the text line height to be larger than font size. So, this is stuff that's best displayed, I think, just by doing and seeing what each thing does. I hate going through slides like this, but, I feel like sometimes I need to just explain some of these concepts and talk about them that you're coming across. So these are all the various things you can do in a reset style sheet, right? In ways you can change your page layout. And here's a good visual example of a floating element. Let's talking about floating. So floating an element takes it out of position and places it along the left or right side of its parent element, right? To float an element, you're going to apply it like this. You're going to have your property is float, and then your type is, okay, so position is where you're going to float it. You're going to specify where you're going to float it. So where the position is none, which is the default, left to float the object on the left margin, or right margin, or right to float the object on the right margin. So you would say float left, float right if you want it to be on the left or right. If the sibling elements are floated along the same margin, they are placed alongside each other within a row. So let's see. Here we go. Here's an example. So in this, on the right side, you can see the elements floated on the right margin, and the subsequent page content wraps around it. And then here's like the original layout in HTML. So using that float property, we'll kind of do this little effect. And if any of you have started any of the tutorials. There was some practice with floating. All right. And I think we've covered enough to get through. Let's do 3.1. You want to do tutorial 3.1? Have we done that? I don't think we've done that. I don't think we've done anything in 3. So let's do tutorial 3.1. I think we have covered enough of this slide to at least do that. Yeah, we're on slide 20 already. All right, so I'm going to head into MindTap, and I'm going to go into the sandbox, and let's do coding challenge 1. While this is loading, give me, I'm going to pause for a second and refill some, I'm going to get some water so I don't start having the frogs come back into my throat. So if you guys want to, if you're going to follow along, you can go ahead and load up your sandbox for tutorial 3.1 coding challenge. I'll be right back here. Okay. Anybody started these and run into anything with T1 in particular? I am going to real quickly here do a screenshot of the attendance. Bear with me. Okay. All right, so we've got tutorial 3, coding challenge 1 loaded up here. And I'm going to shrink my file tree, and I like to expand I like to push that browser preview out a little bit. And here we are, T3 coding 1. So let's jump into this. So this one, it says in the instructions, 379 shows an example page containing 2 applications of floating objects. So we're going to be floating some stuff, right? Here's what our page needs to look like, right? Little picture of Abe Lincoln there. You can see some of the floating elements in this page. We've got a very large T that's floating here. We've got an image that's floating here. Okay, so we're going to create some of these effects. In the first line of Lincoln's second inaugural speech, a drop capital T is created by floating the first letter of the first paragraph next to the surrounding text. The text of the speech is wrapped around. This effect is created by cutting the Lincoln image into separate strips. So they kind of show you that. I'll show you how they did that. You're going to explore how to create both effects. Okay, so this is showing you the finished product already. How do I want to reset this. I don't know if I can. All right, I'll just go along. All right, so it says the first thing we have to do, of course, is put our name in the comment section, our name and date. And it wants us to do that on the HTML and the code 3.1 float CSS. So here and here, we're going to make sure that we have put our name and the date in the comments section, okay, on those 2 things. So that's usually pretty easy. Second step, go to the code 3.1 HTML file in your editor, and within the head section, we're going to insert a link element linking the CSS, the float CSS style sheet. Okay, and then it says take some time to study the content of the page, so meaning the HTML page. So here I've already created the link for the float CSS. If you guys can see that. That is how we create the link for a CSS. And this one is in particular is code 3-1 underscore float.css. Of course, our relationship is style sheet. And I know you guys, if you're following along, I know you have to toggle back and forth between screens. This is being recorded, just so you know. So that if it's easier to do this while you're watching the recording, I am recording. All right, so that is the second thing to do, is insert that link to the style sheet within the head element, of course. And I always put that under the title. And in this case, it was easy to follow because the first link was already there. So we just entered the second link directly under that. Okay. Then the third task is to open the code 3-1 float CSS. So that's this one. And we're going to create, and for all image elements, we're going to create a style rule to set the height of the image to 3.3 em, and then float that image on the right margin, but only when the page is cleared of floats. Okay, so we're going to create, so that's down here. Okay, so here is my code for setting the height of the image, right? I don't know how it ended up down there. But the first thing we're going to do, so the element is image, img, open up a curly bracket, hit the return key, and it says only when the page is clear to float. So the first thing we need to do is clear the page of any other floats that are going on, right? So we do that with the clear property. So we type clear and then colon, and then we're going to clear it of, we're concerned right now with the right margin. So we're going to clear right, and we're going to float right. And then we're going to set the height to 3.3 em. And we're talking about the height of the image. So we're not going to do line height. It's just height. 3.3 em. You guys, can you see that? It looks kind of faint on my screen, but hopefully you guys can see that. I don't know if I can blow up. Let me see if I can blow up. Just, I can make my display larger. Is that better? Your float has nothing written on it. You mean right here instead of right, you actually left it as none, or? I didn't type this already. I mean, I didn't type this live because, yeah, you guys still have to do the code. I already did this. So I'm just showing you where my code is. But you're going to have to type this code out. It shouldn't already be on the CSS. Yeah, no, sorry, Darius. I looked at it when I first opened it and I realized I had already completed this one. You know, I always work ahead of everybody just to make sure that there's not going to be any issues, because I'm, you know, like I said, I'm evaluating this software for this course. So I do it, but then I forgot to clear it out. So I don't have a blank. So you're going to actually put this code. Okay, so that's going to clear any floats. And then you're going to set your image height to 3.3 em. Yeah, I usually type it with you guys, and I just realized I already did that. All right, so once that's cleared, once you have this, you can check that one. And then the next one says we're going to create a drop cap. Let me know if I'm moving on too quickly here. But to create the drop cap, which is so the clear just clears everything on the right side of the page, right? Yes, yeah, it's gonna, you know, so this is like a reset kind of thing. So we're gonna create some new floats, and so we want to make sure there aren't any already there. We're going to create this drop cap right here, this big giant T next. This is what our final product is going to look like. So, all right, so the next thing we're going to do is do a drop cap, and we do that by doing, so this is a paragraph first of type, and then it's the first letter. So if you remember from T2, first of type, so we do P for, it's like a paragraph element, right? Colon, and then first of type, and then double colon, first letter. So this is what that is going to look like. And then do your open curly bracket. Maybe I'll just go ahead and code this with you guys. I'm just going to delete that. So first of type. And I put this on, don't ask me why it's on top of my image. You can probably have it underneath. So we want first of type, first letter, open curly bracket, and then hit your return key. And the first thing we want to do is, it says float the element on the left margin. So we're going to float left, right? Left. And then I'm going to hit my enter. Our font size is going to be 4em, and the line height is going to be 0.8em. Okay, so our font size, let's do that next. Font size is going to be 4em. And then our line height is going to be 0.8, 0.8em. Okay. And then I'm going to hit my return key. It says set the size of the right margin and padding space to 0.1em. So we want margin right and padding right to be the same here. So the next thing is going to be margin right, 0.1 em. And padding right, 0.1 em. Okay, and then it says set the bottom padding to 0.2. So that's going to be padding bottom, 0.2 em. And I think that's it for that one. So you would go ahead and do your check mark. Did I skip? So that's the first, that's the drop cap. First of type, first letter. So it's a paragraph element. So you got to have P, colon, first of type, and then double colon, first letter. I totally did. Yeah, here it is. I knew it was there. I was just looking for it. Okay. And okay, so then the last part of that is now we're going to display the first line of the speech in small caps by adding a style rule for the selector. So if we look at our example, see how the first line of this is it's all caps, but they're like called small caps, right? Okay, so we're going to make that happen on the first line. So here again, we're going to have first of type because it's a paragraph, first of type. And what type of first do we want? We want the first line. Okay, so we're going to do, it's a paragraph element. So we're going to do P colon first of, and then type is what we want. And then we want double colon, and we have to explain what first of type do we want? Not first letter this time, but first line, the whole first line. And then we're going to open our curlies and hit the return key. And I know I'm kind of going off page here. Here we go. So we're going to make this style rule to change the font variant to small caps and the font size to be 1.4 em. Okay, so here we have font variant is our property. So font variant. Like I said, when you start typing these, you'll see it in the autocomplete list. And if you don't see it there, then you're probably starting to type the wrong syntax. Your syntax is wrong. Font variant's going to be small caps with a hyphen there. So small caps. See, there it is. And then we need to describe how small. So we want that font size to be, oops, font size is going to be 1.4 em. Okay. And I think that's it. Then, and then there's the image that we did at the beginning. Okay, so that's what we should look like to get that third one checked off. And then the last is, of course, open the page in the browser preview and look at it. So let's do that. And there we are. So now we look like that. Okay, so once you've done that, click that checkbox. And then here's something that I think some people are missing. Once you've done that, you notice there's no submit button. That does not submit your score to the gradebook. You have to come over here to the far left and you see your task list again over here on the far left. So once you have gone through all the instructions, you go back to your task list and there you see the submit button. You're going to hit submit and then you have one more button, confirm. That will ensure that that grade gets recorded in the gradebook. Okay, and you'll get a confirmation. So if you ever find that you did something and you're not seeing it in the grade book, make sure that you went to the task list on the far left here and you clicked that submit button. Okay. Any troubles with T3-1? Says you're doing something wrong. What does it say you're doing wrong?
So I don't know, but it's like showing all of the 3 things were wrong on the. It says the web page test incomplete. The web page test is incomplete like 3 times, and it says apply style rules to the first paragraph, apply style rules to the second paragraph, and apply style rules to the third paragraph. I don't understand what's wrong with that. Like I did everything that you had, so I don't know.
All right, so.
And it's showing for me that the Lincoln is still like separated.
Oh,
and
he's
it's
still like all
showing.
those different. Okay, so take a look. Let's look at your image first, your image thing. Do you have that on top? Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Try positioning that, cut it and paste it down underneath all of the types and see if that helps. I don't know if that does. I think I may have had that issue too, and I moved my whole image styling down to the last after we. And make sure you linked it to the correct style sheet. That's right. On your HTML page, make sure that you've got that second link there. And make sure your style sheet link is properly typed. Like make sure you didn't have a typo in there or something. That would be the second thing I would try.
Wait, so did you not have to do the margin, the padding in the right and the padding bottom for the image either, or no?
Not for the image, just for the first of type first letter.
Oh my God, I'm so stupid. I must have done that stuff under image
All under
instead
image.
of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, image should just have you're clearing your margin, you're clearing your float, and then you're designating the image height as 3.3 out.
So the first of type first letter has that padding stuff, right?
That's all up here, yeah.
Okay, so the margin right, and padding bottom. Whoops. Give me a second to copy yours again.
Go ahead. I'll leave this up. Anybody else have a similar error? You did, Jess. Is it because of the same thing? Or is it because you had all of these padding and so forth? I'm going to leave my code up. So your 3.1, or I'm sorry, your code 3-1_float, the complete code for that is all, I've got that on my screen. Don't forget your, your name and date in the comments, but I'm just going to leave that here. Let me see if I can shrink my other things so you can just see that code. It says, so your just wasn't working with the image on top. Yeah, I think you have to pull the image styling instructions. I think you have to pull that down underneath all of the floats that we create here with the first letter and the first line. For some reason, I think the image, because I had the same error when I first started, because I started with my image styling being first, and then I did the first of type first letter and then first of type first line. Holy guacamole, look at all these.
Then why don't they tell you to do that last? Like, I don't understand.
I don't know.
And why does it matter where each thing is like first?
I feel like it is, the only reason it matters is that's one of those little sensitivities in this sandbox environment. I'm really not sure. The only thing I could think of is because it wants, it just wants to structure the paragraphs first and then the image. Normally, I don't think it's going to matter whether this is on top or on bottom. So I think this is a sensitivity thing. And I found
I
it,
fixed it, it works now.
and it works now? Yeah, okay. So yeah, you're gonna just have to move your image styling to be last, even though it's the first thing we did. I don't know why. Just take that whole grouping and cut it from the top and paste it on the bottom. And I'll leave the code up in case anybody else is having issues with it.
Thanks for putting up with that.
No problem. I don't know why that does that. But I don't think it would normally not matter. If you were just, using Notepad++ and creating this style sheet, it would normally not matter that that image styling is on top or bottom. Because it's not reading in any necessary order, right? Rebecca, I'm wondering if there's anything else going on yours that might be causing that. You might have to look at your, click on these specifically once they've been graded and see specifically what the issue is. Sometimes it'll tell you. When you render your preview, does it look like this? Or what are you seeing going on that's still not looking right? The other thing I would check is, look at your code. I'll leave mine up on the screen. Look at your code and make sure it matches mine. And then the second thing is check your link to your CSS on the HTML file. Check and make sure that your link to this style sheet is intact and correct. That's really the only things that it could be. If it's not your code, it's got to be the link to the style sheet. And if it's neither of those and they all look exactly like mine, then okay, good. Yeah, sometimes you have to exit out of this stupid thing and back in to to get the checkers to reset themselves. I don't know, but good. All right. Anyone else having issues with this one? Does it look good? Everybody look good? So that was T3 coding challenge 1. That was pretty easy, right? Won't pass the last check. Jacob, sometimes that last check, it just wants you to actually open a new window. And, so even if you did all the things, it wants you to actually click that and bring this up and show it that you know how to preview the window and then click that checkbox. I don't know if that would, let's see, not the refresh and check the task. Oh, the one right before. So like it would probably be this one, this piece of your code, because that's the second to the last thing I think we did. Let's see. So if it's your third check in that third set of instructions, then it's this: set the size of the right margin and padding spaces. Or if it's this one, display the first line of the speech in small caps. So like this, it might be this area. I'm not sure. I would have to look at your screen to see which one you're talking about. But I'm thinking if it's code, it might be this one right here, this area where make sure your code looks like that.
Once we figure out all the problems, are we going to be moving on to T3 number 2 or whatever, coding 2?
We can start it. We may not have time to get all the way through it. Or we can save that for, a Wednesday thing if you guys want to attempt it and see how you do. Like I said, on these, and I'm going to double check something real quick. You should have multiple submissions for these coding challenges. Has anybody ever tried to submit a coding challenge multiple times? You should have multiple.
No. Because once you get I feel like once I get the 100%, I don't think you can submit it again, but I don't know.
Well, if you have 100%, then there's no reason to, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it's gonna take the highest of your scores. So you can't beat 100%. So then it probably just wouldn't. But I don't know. Let me just look here real quick. Give me one sec. I'm gonna take a look at how these are set up. Yeah, you should have unlimited attempts on these. That is definitely something. I'm going to show you my screen. I'm in the settings for these coding challenges. You should have unlimited attempts. So you could literally keep doing them over and over again until you get 100%. But once you've gotten it 100%, then I think that ends your, I mean, you might still be able to do it again. I don't know, but it should, it should like let you keep trying until you've mastered it. Did anybody submit one where you didn't get 100% and then you did not have another attempt available? You should definitely have other attempts available. So just so you know, just to reassure you, if you do not, let me know and I will double check it, but you should have on these coding challenges unlimited attempts because I want you to be able to practice.
What about the quick checks? Do we have unlimited attempts with those or just one?
Good question. Let me look. I can't remember. That's something I set up over the summer, so let me look. Oh, I don't want to start it. The quick checks. Yeah, it does. You're right, Jess. It does let you check your work as you go with the quick checks. I don't know what the heck it's loading here.
I know that, but I think one time I messed up and I wanted to redo one, but I don't think it would let me. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's telling me. So I'm looking at quick check, the first one for this T3, and it's that one's set to unlimited.
Maybe I just didn't know that I could. I don't know.
Yeah, they should be set to unlimited also. The only things you can't do multiples. Go ahead.
Maybe it's because of the due date wouldn't let me do it. So like it was already past due, so I couldn't redo it.
That could be. Yep. Because if you're past your due date, then that's it. So if you need extensions on due dates.
I mean, I did it. I'm just saying, like, I just wanted to retry it that same day or something, the next day or something.
Yeah, that could be why. But yeah, you can check your work as you go, and you can also do unlimiteds of those. And that, again, I put that in place for you guys to be able to study. The only time you can't is on the actual tests, like for this one that's coming up. You don't get unlimited attempts on those. But everything in the actual tutorials, that's all designed for you to be able to go in and do it repeatedly so that you can get practice with this, because coding And practice is the best thing. It's the best way to learn.
So I have another question. It's kind of for the
Uh-huh.
future. Do we have a midterm and a final?
We
Or just
have,
section tests like the midterms and finals?
well, so for this one that's coming up, that's due October 2nd, that would be kind of like our midterm, right?
Okay, that's what
Yeah,
I was wondering if that was like our
yeah,
midterm.
it's not really. I don't like for this course, I don't really do midterms and finals. I just do like kind of these, set at a set point in the semester at set points. I like to make sure that I like to do an assessment to make sure that what you're learning is sticking. So no, yes and no. There's not another midterm in addition to this, if that's your question. So you could kind of call that the midterm if you want. And then the next one of those, test 2 covers, tutorials 6, 7, and 9. All right, so there's that, and those are kind of like the midterm and final, I guess, as close
Then
as you.
what test covers 4 and 5?
There isn't one. So those are just because if you look, those are pretty intense. There's 26 activities for 4, and 18 for 5. So you're going to get enough practice in there.
Okay.
Yeah, just by doing the things. So
Can we start on the next tutorial for 3?
So yeah, if we can start there. If we don't finish that and you guys want to see the end of it, then we can pick that up on Wednesday. I kind of want to, for recording purposes, keep it all in the same, but that's okay. So let's start 2 and see how far we get. And then, if anybody wants to, if you're comfortable doing these on your own, knock yourself out. If you try doing them and you get stuck somewhere, come to the lab on Wednesday and I can answer questions there. But if I don't finish tutorial 2 today, I will definitely do that on Lab Wednesday as well. So coding challenge 2, here we go. Give me a second while that loads. All right, here we go. Excuse me. So tutorial 2, and I did start this one too, you guys, so bear with me on this. Let's go here, here, here. I will just erase what. So here is, our summary. This is what that page should look like when we're finished with it. So now we're going to be messing with layout, okay? So coding 1 was just, challenge 1 was just doing floats. Here we're going to actually start doing some layout stuff, okay? So that's what we're going to end up looking like for challenge 2. Figure 3A shows a proposed layout for a new web page. At this point, the final content's not ready for the web page, so the layout is shown using a lorem ipsum text. If you guys have ever heard of lorem ipsum text, it's just that gibberish language that we use as placeholders when we don't really have the text that we want to put there in place, but we do know that we want to show some content there, so we use that lorem ipsum, and you can grab those off the internet anywhere and copy paste if you ever need to use that in your web development adventures in your life. So that's what they're referring to when they say lorem ipsum. It is just gibberish designed to be a placeholder. All right, so you've been given the HTML code for the page, and your challenge is to create the page layout using the CSS grid styles, okay? Excuse me. So the first thing, open the code and put your name and date in the HTML and the code 3.2 layout CSS page. So here and here. You need to put your name and date in the comments comments section. Of course, that's the easiest. I don't know why it didn't have you put your name in this comment section too, but I did it anyway. So.
Yeah, I did all three and it said it was right.
Okay, yeah, I did too. So if you just do the 2 pages that it said and it comes up wrong for some reason, I don't know that it will, but I put mine in 3 because it's there and it was there as blank space. So I went ahead and put mine there too in this regular CSS. And then step 2 says go to the HTML file, and within the head section, insert a link element linking the HTML page to the layout CSS, the layout style sheet. So back here, we're going to create this link to the layout style sheet. So that's right there. And I'll leave that for you guys to look at. All right, and then once that's done, next we're going to go to the layout CSS. So here, okay, and we're going to create a style rule for the header, footer, aside, article, and the hyperlink, the A elements, okay, to set the padding space to 10 pixels and add a 3-pixel gray dashed outline. So first thing we're going to do is include all of those elements in this style rule. So I'm going to start with header. And what do we do to separate those? We use a comma, right? Footer, comma, aside, comma, article, and hyperlink, or A, okay? So we put all of those and we're going to open up our curly bracket. I'm going to hit return. And it says to do the padding space, padding 10 pixel. And that's going to go, it's not specifying anywhere, so I'm just going to leave it as padding 10 px. Okay. Because it didn't say top, right, bottom, anything like that. So I'm just going to leave it padding. And then we're going to do the gray dashed outline. So that is called outline, right? And we can specify that it's going to be 3 pix dashed gray. So the way we do that is 3 pix and then no commas or anything needed, just dashed. And then the color is gray. And then your semicolon. And I think that's all we have to do to those elements, but all of them together. So I'm going to go ahead and run my check on that. Excuse me. These checks take a while sometimes. I don't know why. Okay, so super, we passed. And if you're wondering why it says 5 out of 5, even though that was really only to instruct 2 styles, it's because there's 5 elements that we applied that to. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We applied this style rule to 5 different things. So that's 5 checks that it had to run. All right. Next says create a style rule for the body element that, and then number 1 sets the width to 90% of the browser window, ranging from a minimum width of 640 pixels up to a max. So we're going to have min width, max width going on here, and percentage. Okay. So the first thing we do is set our percentage. All right. So, well, the very first thing we do is say what element this is. That's the body element. Open your curlies and hit your return key. Excuse me. When I'm working at the bottom of the screen, you guys, can you, because it doesn't let me advance until I've gotten some more lines. So just remind me if I'm down there and you can't see to do that. Okay, so here we are, body. So we want to set this is going to be a fixed width, and that's a percentage. So we want this first percentage to be 90%. So 90% of our available browser window is going to be devoted to the body. We are going to set a minimum width and a maximum width, however. So min width is going to be 640 pixels. So 640 pix. I'm going to call it pickles from now on. Max width is 1024. So max width, and those are your standard browser display pixels, right? Pixel widths, aka pickles. All right, so that's the first one. The second one says sets the top and bottom margin to 30 pixels and the left and right margin to auto. Excuse me. Frogs are coming back into my throat. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when I talk all day for a living. Okay. So we're still styling the body. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the return key. And we are setting our our margin is going to be 30 pixel auto. So we want this to be auto. So margin's going to be just margin the whole thing. 30.
Right, so we don't do the margin top and bottom separate 30 pixels and then the margin left and right separate and do auto? Or?
You can, but I'm going to do it this way and see auto just to show you. You don't have to separate that. If it's going to be the same top and bottom, you can put them both on one line. And then left and right. That's a good question. You can try it and see if it accepts it that way. But they're
try
all
them separately, you mean?
Yeah, if you want to list them all out, you can try it like margin top, margin bottom, 30 pix, and then left and right auto. But if you remember, the reason I did it this way is if you want to do it all on one line, you have to go in clockwise fashion, right? So the very first thing that it's going to look at is the top, and we've already said that's going to be 30 pixel, right? So I'm going to draw an imaginary square here, okay? So to represent our page. So top would be 30 pixel, which is what they said, right? And then the left and right's going to be auto. So the next thing in clockwise fashion is right, and right's already auto. Bottom comes next in clockwise fashion. That's going to be 30 again. And then left is going to be auto. So you can do it this way, or you can type it all out. I'll leave that up to you guys, but I'm showing you the short way. But if you would like to do margin top 30 and then margin bottom 30 and then margin left auto, margin right auto, you can certainly do it. Might accept that. I'm not real sure. I would try it. But in the real world scenario, it would do exactly the same thing. You're right. Anybody want to be the guinea pig on that one?
Sure, I'll do it.
I'm curious. But I'm taking the shortcut because, you know, like I said, in theory, we know that we go in a clockwise fashion. And so if we want to have all of the margin commands on one line, we just need to know that we're following that according to clockwise fashion, it's going to do what it said. So. And then I'm going to hit return key. And then the next thing says to display the body as a CSS grid. So we're already in the body element. So I just need to say display as a grid like this. Okay. And then step 4 says create 6 grid columns, each with a width of 1 FR. Okay, so 6 columns. So the way we do that is there is a command called grid template columns that we're going to invoke. So just start typing grid and you'll see it in the autocomplete grid template columns. Okay, and here we want all 6 of them. So we're going to have 6. And they're all going to be the same size, 1 FR. So we can do this. Grid template columns, colon, and we're going to say repeat. And then in parentheses, you're going to put what values it's going to repeat. So there's going to be 6 of them, and then comma, the size is going to be 1 FR. So that's how you would do that template, a grid template. So see that code? I'll leave that on my screen for a second. And we only have about a minute, so I'm going to finish this body element, and then I'll conclude, and then we can pick this back up on Wednesday. So grid template columns, and then you're going to use the repeat as your value. Repeat, and then 6 for 6 grids or grid columns, and a width each of 1 FR, 1 frame. And then number 5, step 5 in this says create 5 grid rows with widths of 50 pixels, 30 pixels, 1 FR, 1 FR, and 100 pixels. So this is a little specific. So this is going to be our rows. Okay, so we got the columns. Now we need our rows. So that's going to be grid template rows. And here we're going to specify our values because they're all different. The columns were all the same, but these are all different. So this is going to be, we're going to type this out as 50 pixels, and we don't need to separate these by commas either, and 30 because we're going in clockwise fashion. 1 FR and 1 FR again. And then 100 pixels is the last thing. Okay, so that line's going to look like that. All those values just get put next to each other without columns after the grid template rows property. And then the last thing, the last step here is we're going to add it didn't work with the separate things, Darius. Okay, thanks for trying. So yeah, make your margin padding and auto like this. It wants it like that, I guess. The last thing is adding a grid gap of 15 pixels. So the property there is called grid gap, and that's pretty, self-explanatory. Just type grid, and then you should see grid gap as a property, and we want that to be 15 pixels. All right, so that should be everything in the body element, all of the styling that we're doing in the body element. And you can preview it if you want and see if it's starting to look. So this is what we just set up right now. Here's the body, all of this light yellow. And so let's see if we're starting to look like that. Okay, we're starting to. It didn't pass the check, but everything else did. Let's see. Your columns didn't? Just the columns? Let me see if mine does the same. Yeah, mine didn't either. Let's see. What thing is it looking for here? So it's the first one, grid template columns, property for the page body. Grid template columns. What did did I put too many spaces in there? Let's see. Repeat. Six and one FR. Huh. Well, there's a mystery. Yeah, I was just going to say, so that's what I'm doing. I just put a space in there. Let's see if that fixed it. Between the 6 and the 1FR, I just did that very same thing. So let's see. Again, one of those stupid little nuances about this software. Yep, that fixed it for me too. Okay, so make sure you have a 6 between, make sure you have a 6. Make sure you have a space between your 6 comma and then the 1FR. Yay, that fixed it. And we just have a couple of more things to do here. We'll pick this up. I don't know. You know what? I mean, does anybody want to stay? You want me to just keep going here with this? If you have a class to go to, I get it, and we can pick it up Wednesday. Okay, I'll keep going. Let me just keep going. Just keep it all in one recording. So we'll finish this challenge too, and then Wednesday's lab. If you guys have questions on 3 or 4, the debugging. I know the debugging is always, you know. All right, so let me keep going with this one. If you have to go, go ahead. By no means do I need you to stay. This is being recorded. I just want to keep the recording all together. Okay. So then the next thing in this challenge, set the size of the grid item as follows. Okay, so here we go. So we have several items that we're going to put in this grid, obviously 6 of them, right? So we probably have 6, well, let's see. Have the header element span from grid line 1 to grid line -1. So the header element. So we're going to do header. And let me open up my curlies. And this is the column. We're talking about grid columns. Grid column. We're going to have that span from 1 to -1. So all we have to hear in the value area, we're going to type 1 and then a / and then our ending value, which is -1. See how I have that? So that's going to make whatever, I'm going to refer to my HTML here. In the header, you see how we have all these elements in the header, excuse me, in our header. Whoops, here's our header. That is going to be, anything in here is going to go in this grid line 1 to -1. All right, so trying to figure out where that's going to be here on this, right here. 1 to -1 is this, I think this is the area that it's illustrating right here. All right. And this, by the way, looking at this whole thing, since there's no content in it, but it's showing you a layout, we refer to this as a wireframe. So essentially, we're styling a wireframe, if you guys have ever heard that term before. Okay. All right, so back to our layout. So this is what that looks like for the header. And the second thing says have the article intro element span 2 rows and 2 columns. So the next thing is going to be article intro, like that, right? Because that's what our class is on the HTML. If you look at it, article ID is intro. So that's how we indicate that on our style sheet is we do article hashtag intro. And I'm going to open my curlies. And that's going to span 2 rows and 2 columns. So we just do row and column. So grid row is going to be 2. Span 2. You have to say span 2. Oops. Let me type that again. Span. And then 2. Well, it should be that, like that. And then grid column, same thing. Grid column. Span. And that's going to be also 2. And then your semicolon. So that's going to be your article intro. The third thing here is have the article main element 2 rows and 3 columns. So we're going to do the same thing. Article main. And I misspelled article. Spelling and typos is one of the most frequent errors that are in syntax. It's not sometimes it's not necessarily that you had your code wrong, but you misspelled something in your code, and that's going to throw a syntax error. So watch your typos and stuff when you're coding too. Just as important as actually knowing how to code. Grid row, again, grid row, span, and this is going to be 2. And then the grid column, in this case, is going to span 3. So we're going to span 3 columns. Okay. And then the last thing that we need to style here is the footer. It says have the footer element span 2 columns. So here we go, footer, open curlies, and I'm again getting to the end of my page here. Grid column 2, so 2 columns, grid column, span 2. Did I skip anything in this? We did the header.
No, you didn't. I think you did everything.
Okay, so let me run the check on that piece. Okay, so that all looks good. All right, and then the third, of course, the last is just to open it up and display it. So let's do that and make it happy. And look at what we have now. Okay, so now we've got a nice layout. We went from that, I saved that, I kept that open. We went from that to that. And we definitely look like the solution file. So you see where we did the spanning. We spanned a grid column Well, in our header, the grid column is one column and it spans from 1 to -1. So it kind of goes the whole width, including a -1 value. Then we did the article intro. That's this area here that spanned 2 columns. And you can see there's two micro columns here from the 6 in the grid that we outlined. This spans 2 columns. And it spans 2 rows. So we're going to designate those rows, I think, in the next challenge, but it spans that. And then the article main that we did spans 2 rows. So it's the same length down, but 3 columns. So, and you can see that it clearly includes 3 columns from our 6 column grid, right? You can tell that there's 3 columns in there. And then our footer down at the bottom is a 2 column span. So we look now just like that. Okay. All right, so that concludes challenge 2. I'm going to go ahead and do that check. And just make sure, of course, that once you've done all the checks, you go over to the task list over here and get your submit button and submit that, and then confirm. All right, and so if you guys have any questions, I will see you on Wednesday, and I can review anything else in T3 that you need me to. So continue working on T3 stuff this week, and we can review anything we need to on Wednesday. And we will have, just a quick reminder, so the quiz opens up on the 27th. That is Sunday, but it's not due until October 2nd, which is Friday, right? So we will still have Tuesday if you guys feel like you need to review more of the 1 through 3 stuff. We can use, not Tuesday, Monday, the 28th. We can take that day and review some more to help you prepare for the quiz. But if you feel like you're solid and you want to go ahead and just take it, it does open up on Sunday the 27th. So we'll have Lab Wednesday for any specific T3 questions, and then Monday we can review a little bit if anybody needs to see any concepts from anything T1, T2, or T3. All right. So thanks guys for sticking around. I will go ahead and end the recording and post this as soon as it's done processing. Have a good day, everybody.